go. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 4 of Cultivation Chats. I'm Ray, I'm the host. This is my guest today, Allie Mitzak. Hi. This is a dear friend of mine. She's a biomedical engineer. She is a marketing strategy manager. Is that your title?
Strategic marketing manager, yep.
Yeah. So tell a little bit about, just real quick, where you work, and I'm going to do like a little extra intro, and then we'll go right into the combo.
Yeah, I work for a company called Maxtec. They're based out of Salt Lake City, and they do oxygen delivery and analysis types of medical devices.
Cool. And you do the marketing for one of their product groups, or really all of them, right? Or
yeah, so I do strategic marketing for their medical portfolio. They have some products that are in like scuba diving and in industrial applications, but I focus on the medical portfolio.
Cool. Well, full disclosure to everybody watching, me and Allie are good friends, and we live just a few floors apart. So I'm on one floor, she's on the other, but we figured this would be easier than like trying to scrunch in front of a camera and be side by side. But so Allie is an engineer, and we met just living in the same building in Raleigh. And one of the reasons that I decided to bring Allie in to do one of these chats with me is because, well, first of all, she has an amazing podcast called BME Grad, which helps other biomedical engineering students decide where to go next with their career, how to even think about what their next step should be, how to make the right connections, how to decide, what they want to focus on for professional development and just choosing their career path. And also, she didn't have, like me, didn't have the sort of typical path that you might expect from someone who ends up in a position of, authority at a company doing like really great work. So, Allie, could you tell us a little bit about how you decided to get into engineering in the first place? And I'd love to hear a little bit about, your experience as a first-generation college grad and what that looked like when navigating the whole career planning, school planning process.
Yeah, decided to become an engineer and fell into it, or is the distinction there. First generation college grad, I mean, I was very lucky that my family had the resources to kind of get me some coaching and help on like how to navigate that process. But I guess what it feels like is maybe folks don't understand like how hard it can be to get into college, what you need to do to get into college, where to go, what kind of career can come out of an education. I think just kind of being the first in my family to kind of go through that, you don't really have anyone in like corporate life in your family to look at as an example of, the types of jobs you can get after college. So that was challenging, and it's hard to envision yourself doing anything, I guess, like really. So I was very fortunate. They got me a counselor outside of school to help me with just like college planning and all of that. I think the organization was called Kappa PA. I grew up in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And they like did all these like assessments on me. I was like a 16-year-old, and they were like doing like personality and like career assessments on me. Yeah. And they said, do business. And I said, no. So, which I'm kind of doing now. So it's ironic, but I definitely was like strong in science and math in high school. Probably just due to some really good teachers that gave me attention in those subjects. And I definitely wanted to pursue something like medical science-y. So they were like, well, how about like business/medicine with biomedical engineering? It's a growing field. They laid out a bunch of schools that had strong programs in biomedical engineering, and I literally just applied to those schools. So that's how it went. Amazing. Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad to have you as a friend, and I'm glad mainly because you help correct my misconceptions about things like DNA and immunity. Like,
oh yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, Allie was like, yeah, immunity and DNA, it's like a connected thing. And I was like, that's crazy.
I don't even remember. We were in the car. I don't know what we were talking about, but
workout class.
Yeah. I think we were like understanding the concept of immune system is what we were. Yeah.
Yes. We're trying to avoid COVID is what is happening here, and talking about transplants. But that's a whole rabbit hole. Yeah, something you said about envisioning yourself in a career, in a position, I think that really resonates with me, because that's why I started this. Was, you can't envision yourself doing a thing unless you know the thing is a thing, and that people can do it, and that there are people out there doing it. There are people like you doing it. Seeing yourself reflected out in the world is so important. And, to your point about being in school and not knowing, or thinking about being in school and not knowing what that next step would look like, studying creative writing, no one talked about how to make money from writing. It's like, you either become a famous author or you don't. It's like, well, most people don't, so I guess I'm screwed. Still not a famous author, but we're working on it.
Well, and as like a young person, like a teenager, a high schooler, you don't go actively seek those examples and content, like, these videos you're making. You don't go actively seeking that. You just kind of like have what you have around you. Sure. So
you meet a friend of a parent who says, oh, this is what I do. And you ask the right questions and it sparks something. Or you see someone on TV doing a thing that you never thought was possible. And then you become curious. But it's all about exposure, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so you decided to become an engineer. You decided to pursue that in college. So what made you decide to move into the marketing space? Because that was really surprising when we met and you started talking about marketing, and that's something we connected on.
Yeah, it was a series of being redirected. So when I went into college, I still had in the back of my head, like, I'm not doing business. Like, I'll do this biomedical engineering degree, but I'm going to be pre-med. Yeah. And I did EMT training my freshman year, and it was like, okay, patient care actually isn't my direction. So as I went through the biomedical engineering program, I got involved in some like projects that were trying to get spun out into companies. And I found myself in a leadership role in one of those projects where I was coordinating a team of like 7 or 8 people at that time. And I found myself directing all the like technical work to others and taking the market research and the pitch work and all of that. So I kind of had a sense that I wanted to be on that commercial side of the biomedical engineering space, probably about halfway through college. Oh, and then I was fortunate to find that Halma Future Leaders Program that we've spoken about, that rotational program that let me try in a bunch of different roles for 2 years. And so that just really like sealed the deal for me.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think too often, too often, once people do think, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing now, they lock themselves into a path, and that can lead to a lot of job changes, career changes, sort of short-term positions, because they haven't given themselves enough time to explore, the various avenues within a single career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know why they accepted me into this program. I feel so fortunate to have become a part of it. So Halma is a holding company listed on the London Stock Exchange, but they own about like 40, 50 companies worldwide. And they take about 15 to 20 students from all over the world every year, typically STEM students, engineering students. And when you get into this program, it's a full-time position and you rotate around their group companies, their holdings. So every 6 months, you'll go to a new company in a new area and be in a new role. And that, it's just rapid change for 2 straight years. You have a lot of say in your pathway that you take through the program. And so, and all the companies are technology companies. So that's where the engineering background really plays a nice part. You pick up the product they sell very quickly. Sure. Some of these companies include, medical device companies, environmental analysis companies. I was at a fiber optic company. There are sensor companies. So yeah, that's a little bit of an overview of the program.
Cool. And then what made you decide to choose the company you're with now?
So they are a part of this holding group. I had worked for their sister company in one of my rotations. And I think what stuck out to me most was the culture at this company. Like, I just really felt like a big sense of team. And I have a lot of friends that I had made that worked at that sister company. And so, and I got to interact with the company I'm at now quite a bit during that time. So it was number one, culture and people, but number two, they do respiratory related medical devices, which I've just always found very interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Why? What's so interesting about respiratory devices?
Well, so again, like this is, it's all happenstance, but, my junior
very
year,
random thing. It's like, I know why I like knitting, but like,
yeah,
respiratory devices.
and I'm not going to say like I'm passionate about respiratory devices.
Yeah.
Like I think I probably would be more passionate about like things geared towards women's health if I'm talking from like the true heart, but respiratory is interesting. And it's because I've been just exposed to it too many times to not be curious. I did an internship. Yeah. So I did an internship with the Navy. I think I might have told you about this.
I don't know about this Navy internship. I think I would have remembered that.
I didn't tell you about this? Okay. So
no.
I was when I was a junior in college, or after that year, I think. Yeah. I got into the Naval Research Enterprise internship program, and they placed me. Yes.
But how did you even know to apply for that?
I don't know. I think it maybe got sent to me in an email from the department or something, that this was an opportunity, or maybe a friend told me about it. I had some friends that were doing DoD work at the time that may have told me about it. So as part of this program, I got to like list a couple top choices of labs to work at. And I got my top choice, which was the Naval Submarine Medical Research Laboratory.
Amazing.
Mouthful. And then when I was there in New London, Connecticut, we were trying to model with equations an answer to the question of what happens to the lungs when a Navy diver is underwater and a charge goes off. And so I did a lot of like lung research when I was there. And then moving back into my senior year at college, typically in an engineering program, you have a year-long project called like your capstone your senior year. And for ours, you and a group go into the hospital and find a problem and try to solve it. And so we were in the emergency department. There's a rare blunt chest trauma that can like break several ribs in a section and cause like a flail segment. And so that can puncture the lungs. So we made a device to stabilize ribs to protect the lungs. I don't know. I just had a lot of interaction with it. And so and had done pretty in-depth research on the respiratory system. So then, I kind of got to nerd out with this company on their technology a little bit.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I didn't do an internship in college. I did one earlier, but I think that's such an important step to take, because you wouldn't have had any idea that you were interested in this kind of technology, which led you to now the position you're in, which you really enjoy, right? Without going through that internship process. And
it's all luck. Like, to get an internship is hard, and for it to have been in something you were interested in is lucky. And
but I think too, what's that quote, that cheesy quote about like how luck is hard work meeting opportunity or something like that? I don't you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I think also, we've talked a lot about how it's so important how you position yourself. So being in college, first of all, being in high school and being engaged enough for teachers to take an interest, like you said, your science and math teachers, you were probably an engaged student, and you probably had a really, positive experience in part because of that. Look, you got to be a good teacher to begin with, right? But that's really important. And then positioning yourself when you're in college to be not just showing up to class in sweatpants, just sort of like sitting at the back, yawning your way through it, but really being engaged, building relationships, getting involved, pursuing activities, clubs, whatever it is. Because when you place yourselves in those spaces and build relationships with those people, then people think of you when opportunities arise. They're going to send that email. They're going to mention the internship they heard about. But if you're not putting yourself out there and making those connections, no one knows enough about you to think of you. And that's huge. And it's also how you get letters of recommendation for internships, for, higher education pursuits. So, it's luck, in that internship existed and somebody sent it to you or mentioned it to you, but it's not luck that you positioned yourself to be thought of in that way.
Yeah, I definitely worked really hard to position myself positively for all of those types of things. In college, I was like wearing like heels to class every day with my giant backpack, sitting in the front row. Like I treated it like a corporate job. Like I really did. Like I was like, I need to show up for this. I obviously slipped some days. I was a college student after all, but yeah, I definitely realized the environment I was in quite early and tried to, show up for it.
Well, personally, I showed up to class sweaty every day because I was on this whole like save the planet. I'm selling my car. I'm just like riding a bike full time. And I'd show up to class with this commuter bike with like 2 panniers on the front and 2 on the back. It was like everything I needed for class and work and like riding 10 miles back to my house. And I'm sure my professors were like, what is going on here? She's just like sweaty all the time. Is she nervous? What's happening?
No, that's the college aesthetic. Like you were probably very cool in college, right? Like I didn't have that college aesthetic.
I will say that I did start an eyebrow grooming trend where I went through this phase where I cut lines in one of my eyebrows. And next thing I knew, this entire group of friends had all done it. And I was like, oh, God, I guess I have to stop now because everyone else is doing it. So, I guess I was a little bit cool in college.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I'm just basic.
I mean, those are the questions I always ask myself. It's like, did I take it too seriously?
Yeah.
So, but no regrets.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, to this day, what people remember about me is probably not the way I groomed my eyebrows. So it's probably like
maybe it is.
Maybe. Oh God, I hope not. But, even though I was doing things like riding bikes and, doing haircut stuff, I was submitting research papers and I was involved in the school journal and I was submitting work to other journals and volunteering in any space that had anything to do with what I wanted to do as a writer or journalist.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And so, I was exposed to a lot of different types of writing. I still didn't know how to make money from it until years later when someone I was dating actually said, hey, have you thought about being a copywriter? And I was like, what's that?
Yeah.
What, like, is that a legal thing? Like you're talking about copywriting material? No, and so they explained what it was and they were working in ad agencies at the time. And it was like this whole world opened up. I'd of course seen ads and I loved magazines. I loved, I was obsessed with what I didn't realize at the time was branding. I loved like following the ad campaigns of luxury brands. I didn't know those were even ad campaigns. I just knew I loved what I was looking at and it was like super inspiring. But I didn't know that an ad involved a creative director and like what even was that, right? A copywriter, graphic designer, photographer, and so many other people, project managers, production folks. And when I started to learn more about that world, I realized like, this is where I belong. But I was like 25, 26, maybe even, I think it was at least 26 when that conversation happened. And I'd been doing marketing and writing for, a while at that point, but not in a pointed way. And not really even knowing like where it was going. I didn't envision myself, like you said, in any particular role. And that's when things really shot up for me because it was suddenly I saw myself in a place, in a position, in a role, and I saw what the future could look like. Like, okay, this is what happens when you're a copywriter. This is the path. This is where you can go. These are the kinds of things you can do. And it's changed my life. But it was just because I was out there positioning myself, telling people, hey, this is what I enjoy. This is what I'm struggling with. Like, I cannot make money writing. And that's how that happens. So, I mean, you got to be vulnerable. You got to put yourself out there.
It's so true. You have to be vulnerable in seeking that exposure and just being ready to kind of, take what comes with that.
So with your current job, what what's your favorite part about what you're doing right now? And I'm asking this from a place of knowing, obviously, that you're a great leader and you clearly are good at like coaching people, building a team, and you're so early in your career too. I just love for folks to hear a little bit about what that looks like, being a woman also in the position that you're in and really choosing to build the people up around you and take a leadership role, even though that's not necessarily like asked of you.
Yeah, well, I do want to clarify. I don't have direct reports.
Okay.
So I guess what my job is, I'm 3 months in, so forgive me for like not being 100% on it. I'm 3 months
not
in.
Forgiven. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's a small company, so your role can be vast and change rapidly. So I think for the first 3 months, I've been helping just get some product marketing projects rolling that we've wanted to see start moving. Everyone on the team's job title has shifted since me coming on board. So we're all just kind of trying to get used to like our new territories. But I think looking forward, what I'll be doing is kind of setting the strategy for markets we want to pursue, with what products or new products. And then also a larger project I see coming down the pipeline is getting the whole company on a CRM, and
awesome.
I think we have one that we're very underutilizing. So that's going to be a monster project, I think, over the next probably year.
Well, one of the things that we've talked about is how, especially in a first job or early in your career, it's easy for folks to think, okay, I got this job. I was qualified enough for it, had the right education. So I'm in this role and here are my responsibilities. And like, as long as I'm like checking those boxes, I'm just going to be on this trajectory to grow and climb and, build financial security and, get periodic reviews and increases and promotions. But I think it's so important to remind people that you get what you take. If you see an opportunity, like you've seen a couple opportunities where they weren't necessarily asked of you, projects weren't asked of you, but you're like, oh, this is an opportunity where I can have an impact here on the business. So I'm just going to take this on. And now it's a skill you have, or it's a project that you've accomplished, and it makes you valuable in the market.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely like looking beyond your role and looking at the business holistically and seeing where else you can help lift up projects, lift up others. And that's why I love this like small, medium business size, because you have that freedom to make impact, help other people in their roles, and also like kind of develop skills wherever you want, so long as it's like productive towards the business. So you can definitely like take more in your arms, I think, at a small, medium-sized company for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you like being able to do that? Like,
hell yeah.
What is that? But you're working longer days sometimes. I mean, that's just part of it. I think people need to know sometimes when you're seeking out opportunity and really, seeking out those experiences, it's not necessarily within, an 8-hour day.
No, it's not. Yeah, it comes at a sacrifice. But I mean, it's the same development work you would do if you worked your day, ended it, and then, I don't know, took classes by night or something. Yep. So I look at it the same way. And it's almost more motivating to me because I'm doing that development work while helping a company that I believe is making a really positive impact on the world around us. Maxtec specifically was like a big contributor to supporting COVID respiratory care.
That's amazing.
So I guess I should say. So,
yeah, it is. I mean, that's definitely something I experienced when I got my first ad agency job as a copywriter. I had been doing a lot of work studying copywriting, learning about copywriting, filling in the gaps, because it's a totally different skill set than creative writing, than literary writing. But what I realized when I got into the ad agency space, I mean, there's so much I didn't know about what that actually looked like day to day, how to actually execute for clients, even just culture, like what that work culture was like. And And I drove an hour and a half both ways each day to this ad agency. And I spent 8 hours at least in the office. And then I would take notes throughout the day of all the things that I was confused about. And I was like, oh crap, I don't have a clue about what I'm doing. And I was hired on a trial basis. So I really needed to impress. And I'd go home and I would frantically try to fill in the new gaps I discovered the previous day. And that was like a daily exercise. And it's just what I had to do.
Yeah. And it's exactly that. It's a conscious effort. And it also like never ends. Like, I think there's an ebb and flow of like really having a grip on what you're doing and then not. But I think you really get that development work in when you know when to do exactly what you mentioned and like when you need to put in that extra work. So yeah.
And it does require a certain level of self-awareness. I mean, if you're going into something feeling entitled, like you know it all, like there's nothing to learn from folks around you, you're not going to be able to identify those gaps and build strengths, develop new strengths, and really set yourself apart. So I think that's definitely an important, a level of humility and like earnest desire to learn is really important.
And even like, I feel like too, it's like discipline to constantly be like, do I know what I'm talking about? Is this the right way forward? Have I put in enough work to understand this? And not relaxing too much in assuming yes to all of those things, you know? That's definitely like an active process that I think maybe isn't talked about all the time. Like you physically have to discipline yourself and be like, am I doing enough? Do I need to learn more? Yeah.
Well, and I think especially with marketing is changing all the time because the technology is always changing. As we become a more and more virtual society, user behavior changes. So marketing tactics and tools and apps and everything is constantly changing, evolving. Things that worked yesterday don't work today. And so I don't know about you, but I find myself having to constantly be in put myself in a mode of research. I'm researching all the time. I'm constantly analyzing and paying attention to the results. And I know that as soon as I land on something that works for a client, like I'm going to have to change it in 3 months.
Yeah.
It's just a constant discipline.
It is. That's what I imagine my role kind of taking on too, is kind of understanding those trends of our industry. You know, medicine is always evolving. Standard of care and best practices are always evolving. You know, the technology available to us to address those disease states are always evolving. So, you gotta be comfortable with the change, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're going to start to wrap up a little bit, but is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to share, or a piece of advice you'd like to give to people out there? It's your time.
Advice. I don't know. We could talk about the podcast. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Tell about the podcast a little bit.
Yeah. So I think it's just, it's very thematic with everything we're talking. I feel like this conversation is one I would have on the podcast for sure. And the video series you're doing definitely casts a wider net than my podcast, but it's called the BME Grad Podcast, as you mentioned earlier, BME standing for Biomedical Engineering. And it's a little passion project of mine. We both like have that shared history of like going out and finding exposure, and the podcast aims to introduce biomedical engineering students to jobs they could take if they went into the med device or biotech industry. And so we profile recently graduated students, we bring them on, and we just kind of like, ask those really like vulnerable questions. And I'm like, I'm out there like just embarrassing myself every 2 weeks, asking them like, what do you do? What does this mean? Like things maybe I should know and I don't. So and we record that for everyone to hear and we post every 2 weeks. And the goal is to just like get people that exposure, especially during COVID, where you can't really go into an office and see how other departments work and those types of things, and to just get folks that studied what I studied exposure to what they can do with their career, at least their early career. And we're super lucky to have everyone on that podcast just volunteer their time and by nature of that, they're volunteering to be contacted. So I've heard of like great conversations coming from people that listen to the podcast and people that were guests on the podcast, like making connections and learning more about what they want to do with their lives. So, yeah, I feel like that just really fits everything we've talked about here about developing yourself, exposing yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll be sure to share the link to that in the show notes. So I'm working on updating my website to have a section for cultivation chat specifically. And so there will be show notes there, and I'll share that information pretty soon. I'm hoping this weekend, but at least in the social media post, we'll share that link and provide all the information about the programs we talked about. So this has been really great. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me. And, I'll probably see you later today.
Literally anything for you. I love you so much. So thanks.
I love you too. You're amazing. And also, if you do want to share your contact information, we can share that as well later in case anybody wants to get in touch, learn more about your podcast, potentially, ask you questions about the industry. I think that would be really cool. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Allie. And I hope you have a great day.
You too.
Also, I love that we're wearing our matching necklaces.
Oh yeah, we are.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.